Hello and welcome back to the Josh Leesman Experience, or JLXP for short. I am Josh Jatt Leesman. We just concluded 4/5 of Week 7 of the LCS. All of LEC is done. LCK is actually on hiatus. The LPL is going to be starting their online Scrim League tonight, so by the time you listen to it, it will have already started to happen, so it's just like we're trading one for the other. But I'm here with Mark Zimmerman.
Hello.
Yeah, who spent the whole week on the analyst desk. You just watched Crumbz have the weekly wager bet lost after he picked COG.
I just drank a lot of vitamin C in case he's breathed on me.
Yeah, if people didn't see the segment, we haven't done a weekly wager in a while. It's like that thing at the dentist that they put in your mouth to keep your gums exposed so they can work on it. Crumbz wore that for a whole analyst segment, but it was the day-end analyst segment, so it's like 15 minutes long.
Yeah, and he kept it in the whole time, and just sitting within 3 or 4 feet of that is like, dude, if you're like breathing, like you're spraying probably, yeah, and you can hear it like a little. Yeah, I just was worried.
It looked hilarious, and then Twitch chat came up with gums.
So Twitch chat is like,
it was magical.
Collective consciousness of like, what's the funniest joke? Because as soon as the funniest joke happens, everyone spams it.
Yes. And then everyone can appreciate it. So in that way, it's like it's most people aren't being creative, but it just takes one creative person in the 60,000 that were on Twitch at the time, I think, or something, because it was like late in the day post game.
Yeah.
Glorious. Anyway, a lot of big stuff happened in the LCS this week. Already, we have 3 teams at 2-0, with TSM 2-0ing, 100 Thieves 2-0ing, EG 2-0ing. We'll talk about 100 Thieves and EG in a bit, but I think the biggest takeaway of the whole weekend is that C9 lost, and they lost to TSM, who then also beat FlyQuest. And last week, you were on here, and we were talking about how TSM sucks. They just lost to COG.
They did suck. Now they're the best.
Paul Bilther just ended them.
Yeah, they just changed that quickly.
And then they do this. So let's just talk about it, starting with C9.
I think that's the biggest part, is how C9 lost, because when you're the undefeated team, usually what happens is like you have your off game, like, oh, they lost, they're this great team, but then they shot 0 for 30 from the 3-point line or something. Right. Like that's why they lost, not because you played god tier defense. They just had a bad shooting night, like, and that's not what actually happened. I would say it is a bit of a weird draft, but like you can't say Shen top is weirder than Morgana mid.
Yeah, I mean they played they've actually let Sett through multiple times. Licorice had played Vladimir against it in one of the games, and it was not a problem at all.
Yeah, so I don't think the draft you can blame, other than maybe giving TSM a couple too many of their priority picks. Like they were 4-0 on Zyrakan. They got that. Sett is Broken Blade's best champion, or at least he's the best Sett.
He'd only played it once. So it's not like they'd shown this amazing, like, we must have Sett. It was a flex pick for them.
It's a flex pick, and when he did play it the one time, it was really good. So either way, maybe the draft was in TSM's favor, but then they actually just outfought C9. They were smart about attacking the global. They, C9 fought back and was clearly playing well for the most part. And then a couple team fights happened that were incredible, and the game was over.
Yeah, there was definitely a moment in the game when they were fighting over the top turret, and there was like the long 45-second engagement where it was very much like, oh, this is actually an example of how C9 wins. Like, look at them out team fight and out execute, like the Niski Zoe play, where Bjergsen like double bombs him, and then he has no health, and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to keep going. And then he gets another kill. You're like, damn, this C9 team. Yeah. But then the one player who I think did miss 8 3-pointers was Vulcan.
That was his worst game.
It was his worst game, I think, kind of bar none. A lot of missed Leona ultimates, a lot of missed E's in some important moments. But then the rest of C9's team fighting, like, we had yet to see TSM play that decisively. And, like, I was cashing the game, so I was really wrapped up in the moment in the story with Captain Flowers, and like the fights just kind of ended, right? And what was happening is it looked like Broken Blade, because you guys showed some replays of it during Countdown today, so I got to rewatch them. Like Broken Blade was landing multiple 3 or 4-man E's, which were then reconned, which were then Bjergsen bombed. And that was just killing 3 or 4 people at a time.
I think people have underestimated Sett. Because for a long period of time, people are like, oh, he just runs at you. And I think if you're a smart Sett player, your flash ultimate to deliver you onto backlines by grabbing frontliners and then Eing them back if they don't insta-flash is
Right.
actually really powerful.
Right.
More than I think people gave it credit for when the kit was initially released.
Yeah.
Because then if you have follow-up CC, everyone's clumped up. Like, that would work with an Orianna.
It's like a vacuum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he shows the best understanding of team fighting. He showed it a little bit as well in FlyQuest game that happened today on Sett again.
Yep.
And so that was really impressive that they were just straight up out team fighting with this like wombo combo-esque engage.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about Sett too, because when he released, he was like just mega overtuned, and the opinion was like, hey, he is getting picked just because his numbers are so damn high.
Yeah.
And that there's just going to be these counter picks that emerge. But now, keep in mind this is 10-4. He gets nerfed again in 10-5. His armor's going down, and I think that dropped his win rate like 2 or 3% in solo queue. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that critically changes the matchups that he already wins, which is against like the other meta top laners. Like, he's still going to push Aatrox in. He's still going to win those all-ins. I do wonder if he actually stays highly relevant, even at like a 50% win rate. Because just like from my experience on the design team, like a lot of people looked at Sett, or at least I looked at Sett. I can't speak for what the designers say. I'd say me and the community looked at Sett's kit and we said, oh, he's kind of Garen-esque, right? Like, he will be this like low elo guy, and he won't necessarily transition to pro once he's balanced. You're right. I'm not sure about that anymore.
Yeah.
Because sure, it is somewhat simplistic, and when I actually do look at his win rate by elo, like on Lolesports, it is way higher in Silver than it is in Challenger. It does go down, but there's that level of uncounterability. Whenever there's that one thing you can do, which would be like the angled ultimate into E, like if you get good enough at that, that's enough to keep you in pro relevance even at a 50% solo queue win rate, right?
Right. And there's some champions that have those weird curves where it's like, oh, they're good in low elo because you can be lame.
Yep.
And then people start abusing that lameness, and suddenly you can't win in plat and diamond. Mm-hmm. But there are other skill expressions that in pro can be useful again.
Yeah, Sejuani's actually an example of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sett might be that.
Because what I've seen Broken Blade do too is if he has his flash up, he ults the tank onto the AD carry, pulls them in. AD carry panic flashes, he flash follows with his W.
Yeah.
And he kills in one shot.
Yeah.
He's done it a couple of times now, and I'm not sure what the AD carry is supposed to do, because you have to flash first, and then he gets the free flash follow with the true damage, because you can buffer the flash, and it'll go right on top of it.
You can W flash.
Yeah, so, and then people are of course hitting him because they're like, oh crap, there's a Sett in the middle of my team.
Yeah,
so
what else are you going to do?
It's a huge W.
Yeah.
It's a pretty strong haymaker. So when I watch that combo, I'm like, even when it doesn't kill them, they're at like 20% health, and they're out of the fight.
Yeah.
So I think Sett's a bit better than anyone thought at first glance.
And obviously, it's not like this is some revelation. Teams have either been banning him or first picking him.
Right, he's great, obviously.
Except today against FlyQuest, when FlyQuest was blue side and they first picked Aphelios, and probably immediately after some of the dragon fights said, why did we do that? Why did we let Broken Blade have Sett? Because a little bit more about like TSM as a whole this weekend. We'll eventually vote on Player of the Week at the end of Monday Night League games, but like surely Bjergsen's one of the front runners, right?
I would have to say
he was 7-0-11 on Zillion and 7-0-5 on Aurelia today with 378 CS in a 33-minute game, which is incredibly high. But I still kind of feel like Broken Blade had more impact on Sett in the FlyQuest game. Right? Like, Bjergsen had the highlight play at the end where he, like, danced between PoEs, Orianna, killed him, bounced back to Wild Turtles, Aphelios, but, like, some of those Sett fights from Broken Blade just felt like he was just making space.
Crumbz was like, can I give half a player of the week vote, or a player of the game vote to each of them?
I actually voted for Broken Blade.
I think it's totally reasonable too, because even in the top dive that really started the game in their favor, that was Broken Blade ulting Viper out of turret range to start the dive so no one's taking turret aggro.
Yeah.
Then he goes back under, and then he gets the double E to set up the easiest body slam and Aurelia stuff. So like, Broken Blade did a ton of work in that game too. So I think you could have easily given it to either.
Yeah. Okay, so more just about TSM is, we said last week that they were kind of overthinking things, and week to week they would come out with these compositions that no one else was doing, whether it was Taliyah Pantheon or if it was like the Kale Top thing that they tried. And depending on if their plan was like good or not, they would 2-0 or 0-2. This week, it was pretty much as close to win now as they've had with the two hardest teams. I thought there was a chance they were doomed.
Yeah, because if they go 0-2 here, they're not doomed like, oh, we're never going to make playoffs.
Yeah, but that's like a 5th or 6th.
Yeah, you're in the lower bracket.
Yeah, because it would have been at 6 and 8.
Yeah.
Now they're at 8 and 6. They're in second. How do you see them now? But maybe even a better question is like, how do you think they made this week possible?
Well, so I think they still... Two things. When I watch this is like, oh, this is what spring 2019 TSM was like. Their soul laners are both popping off. And Broken Blade and Bjergsen kind of carried them to that finals. And Broken Blade was going to win that finals MVP if they won that last game. So I see Broken Blade as a player with a huge ceiling, and he's kind of playing to that ceiling right now. Bjergsen, like, he's on Maokai, you can't do these things. And I understand Zillion's a supportive champion.
Yeah, but
like,
you can still like pop off on Zillion.
You double bomb, you get the perfect. He had one ult in mid lane that was incredible. And
you mean when he's just like spamming his buttons?
Yeah, we were talking about if he buffered it, because there was, you remember, this might be a bit of a technical tangent, but you could buffer inputs between layers of CC.
That got fixed.
Okay, that is fixed? I thought it did.
Yeah, there actually used to be. This is a way back story. It's actually kind of funny.
I don't know if we want to talk about it. It's so long ago.
No. I have an actual cool story that comes with this. So I was at the 2013 All-Star game. And there was like a player dinner with like Riot. And no one was sitting at the table with the LCK All-Stars. And that was like Faker and Mad Life and like just all
They're
these.
They're too
like,
intimidated?
Yeah, kind of, right? And like me and Nick Allen at the time were like I didn't want to go over alone either. So I'm like, Nick, come to the table with me. And really luckily for us, I think it was Home In, the translator was also there. So like we basically just got to talk with like all the S-tier Korean pros at dinner that night. But I still do like communicate sometime, or I still did communicate sometime with the design team there. And I was like, this is an opportunity to just like ask them directly, hey, if there's one thing that you could change about the game, like what would it be?
And that was it?
And Faker was like, when someone is CC'd and another CC is layered and I'm trying to flash, sometimes it works. And that was actually the bug. Even if you perfectly layered, I'll use a Mumu as an example, a Banish Toss into an ultimate. If someone buffered flash, there was actually a 50-50 chance that it would go off in between the permastun. That's fixed now. But like, I can imagine Faker, of all the things in the league, he was like, this drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But that's the tangent. I'm pretty sure it's fixed.
Yeah, I believe it, because there used to be a pretty popular Caitlyn guy where someone was showing how they could sneak auto attacks in between layers of CC. And you could actually do it basically 100% consistently if you were good enough at the timing of it. Either way, that's gone now. So I was watching that game with Prawley, and we were like, did he just do the thing?
I think Vulcan's ult was just like a quarter second.
Yeah, it was during the E travel time.
Yeah.
He was able to get it off probably. But yeah, either way, like Bjergsen, you can't do that on Maokai. You can't you can't make those the game-winning plays on Maokai exactly. So part of it I think is draft. I think they do want to keep some of these draft wrinkles that they seem to have that other people don't. But Bjergsen has played Zillion a billion times, so even though it's a wrinkle, it's not like experimenting really when someone has played 500 Zillion games versus 20 Maokai games this week. So
that's what I like this week is instead of doing a whole team composition wrinkle, like the Maokai Kale game is just like, okay, the whole comp is weird.
Yeah.
Here it's like Bjergsen's pick's a little different and everything else is standard.
Yeah, and Xayah Rakan's their best bot lane. Yeah, I personally think Sett Broken Blade's the best Sett in the league. So even though he's only played it once, he gets it. I forget what Dardoch was playing that game.
So he played this weekend. He played J4 in the C9 game, and he played Gragas in the FlyQuest win.
Yeah, I mean, just give me anything Dardoch can make plays on. I trust that dude. So yeah, I thought while they still managed to keep the wrinkles in a little bit with like the Aurelion stuff, he's also played a ton of Aurelia, and I think you can go for more like, hey, we can pick anything at any moment. But we're not committing to Kale, Maokai, Sej topside.
Yeah, we're not going to do comps. We're just going to do strong picks that have cohesion with each other, which is like it's an evolution of the team that if they can maintain the success will be a good build. they got that Immortals rematch coming up in week 8.
Baby.
I know it's looking way ahead of it, but like their schedule for the rest of the year, 4 games left, currently being 8 and 6. They are playing Immortals, then Golden Guardians in week 8, and they're playing 100 Thieves and Dignitas in week 9. It's possible to win out. And if they did win out, then I think you can really say, you can really do the TSM chant again, basically, because that's when you start having that intrigue coming into playoffs, because they beat C9. They won really good game against C9, and then like a solid game against FlyQuest. C9's still the best team.
Yeah. I think C9 has to be a little... if I'm a C9 player, it feels maybe worse to lose that game because it was... like we actually got outplayed, because sometimes when you mess up and you kill yourself 10 times in lane or something, and you lose the game because that, you go, I threw the game. You don't actually have to confront problems,
right?
But because they, I think, just mostly got outplayed, that is giving them more, hopefully, motivation and fuel to look back and look for things to improve on.
Yeah, there's, I think, I tweeted this out, that C9 losing is probably better for them long term.
Yes, than getting 18-0.
Now, for the record books, obviously it's worse, but I think this happens actually a lot of times in sports. Like, it's incredibly rare, like, to have ridiculous regular season success. But like when an NBA team goes on a ridiculously long win streak during the regular season, like I think the Rockets did this like a decade ago when Yao Ming was hurt, and like Tracy McGrady
took
them
went
on
like 23 and...
Yeah, they got like a 23-game win streak.
Yeah.
But like hearing them talk about it now, like McGrady and Daryl Morey are like, yeah, I kind of wish we would have lost somewhere in the middle. Like, because we did...
Because they lost in the first round of playoffs 4 years in a row or something?
Yeah, the win streak just consumes you sometimes, where it's the only thing you think about. Or the year where the Warriors got 73 wins and set the all-time win record, they didn't win the finals. Because like so much of every game was about... like, let's do the very best thing to win this game, rather than the very best thing to make sure we win the best of 7 or the best of 5 at the end of the year. And I think now, like, C9 was already doing it a little bit, and you're trying to kind of force yourself to experiment. Like, that's what the Shen was. Honestly, if they were trying to win that game straight up, and it was like the playoffs, I don't think they picked Shen when they haven't played it at all.
Yep.
But now I think they're completely unlocked to do more of that, because they're... FlyQuest and TSM are both at 6 losses.
It's like almost, I think it is impossible to get, to lose your
C9
seed.
can still make it to 6 losses. If they beat Golden Guardians,
then
they will lock the number 1 seed with 2 weeks left. So like they're fully unlocked to not worry about 18-0 and get better. So in that way, I think this loss can be good for them. It's always better to lose in the regular season than even lose in a playoff series.
Yep. Agree.
Yeah, that's it. I think C9 is still spectacular. I know that there's a few listeners of the podcast that are like, why don't you talk more about C9? And it's actually been really difficult because I talk so much about C9.
Yeah,
and they're so good.
I literally, I know they lost. I don't have anything new to say. I still think they're the best team in the league. I still think that I appreciate them trying things in draft. I've been saying it for a while that this team is not over-focused on the 18-0 because I see them like, oh, there's fasting Senna and Vlad. They were the first one to bust it out. Even though I'm sure they think that's a good combo, they are still the first one to show it. They're not following other people's trends. So they're still clearly trying to improve. So, yeah, I think everything I thought about C9 is still true. I think it says more about TSM that at their ceiling, they seem like, they can challenge them if this ends up being the finals or something. That I have a lot of hope that TSM can actually push them pretty far. Yeah,
the one thing that I'll be able to say that's new about Cloud9 is I think I want Blabber to play more champions.
What did he play? He
has
Lee Elise.
I'm double checking now.
Gragas.
But he has only played 3 unique junglers. You just said them.
Lee Elise Gragas?
That's it.
That's a little scary.
It's a little short, and it's like, I know Blabber can play Sejuani and he can play Jarvan, but like I just want them to get the reps on it. Because that is something that you don't want, that like the stage game on a new champion for the first time in like 4 or 5 months. Just get that out of their system and make sure it's fresh.
Yeah, game 1, suddenly, you're picking jungle in the second half of the draft, and it gets banned out, and then you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm on Sejuani or Trundle.
I still think Sven and Vulcan are like super on point, but again, when I look at their champions played and compare that to the champions played of other teams, it is way more narrow on C9. Like, Vulcan has only played 4 different supports. Blabber's only played 3 different junglers. And it's good that they have been able to identify the best ones, and they've been playing the best ones, which is a team's strength. But there's also in the point when they lock up first with 2 weeks to go, let's just do some other stuff just in case. That's the main part I have for C9. Either way, they're awesome. They'll play Golden Guardians, who also has a chance to go 2-0. There's a theoretical chance we have 4 2-0 teams.
Congrats on first seed C9.
Yeah, congrats on the 1-1 Golden Guardians. We'll obviously see that play out on Monday Night League. But a couple other 2-0 teams that I wanted to touch on quickly here is we have 100 Thieves going 2-0 over Dignitas and Immortals, and EG going 2-0 over FlyQuest and CLG, who before the game we thought it would actually be really close because CLG had actually beaten Liquid. Let's talk about EG first, and maybe even the CLG EG game, because that's the one we just came off of.
I think we're starting to see this is what I hoped EG looked like when I put them 4th in my preseason power rankings.
Right.
Which was like, Jizuke is a playmaker, he's going to do stuff and not be totally on the wrong page. I never thought this would be like the most well-oiled machine, but like he's at least more on the same page with Sven and Zeyzal. Those are 2 good players for setting up team things. Like Zeyzal, I think, got a lot of flack immediately after Vulcan's success as being one of the best supports in the league.
It's like, wow, look at how much the improvement of the C9 bottom lane
Zeyzal
did.
must have sucked. And it's like, no, Zeyzal's a good support. He reached semifinals at Worlds.
Yeah.
And they stomped Afrika's bot lane to get there.
And, to just elaborate there, I don't think Zeyzal is a good laner. That doesn't make him a bad player.
And I don't even think his laning is that bad.
Okay.
I think that it's been a little overstated because you're comparing him, most people are comparing him to Vulcan, the best laner in the league.
Right.
That doesn't mean he's bad because you're like, okay, well, I also have Afro, Stunt, Huhi, Hakuho. I'm trying to think of some other names that, like, he's at least in that conversation as good or better than them. And, like, at that point, you're talking about half the league as being bad laners. He has a high 4%. He does, like, his XP difference and CS difference is, not CS, gold difference is at least, like, they're not getting shoved out of lane. He's not getting crapped on. I don't think he's great. I'm not saying he's great.
Yeah.
Core JJ, Ignar, Vulcan, clearly in a different league.
There's, like, the elite support tier,
Yeah.
and then there's, like, the tier of the rest of them where you think Vulcan competes in laning and then is better in other areas.
Right, like, Biofrost is probably the cutoff where I'd say that guy's definitely better at laning than Zeyzal, but everyone else after that, I think it's a debate. And maybe comes in a game.
You're coming right off the support tier list, so you're just like,
that's why
you got support brain right here. I'm like, damn, Mark's really thought about this, and then I remembered you to support tier list this morning.
Yeah, I was going over a bunch of stats and stuff. So I think Zeyzal, in comparison to Vulcan, yes, he's not as good as a laner. He's not a terrible laner, and he's a good playmaker. And, like, if he looked bad at the start of the season, all of EG looked terrible at the start of the season. He was on a different page from Bang, and now that they're starting to get on the same page again, what do you know? EG's suddenly ripping off wins.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that's, like, my opinion of EG is, like, I never thought they'd be the perfect well-oiled machine, but, like, Jizuke, Sven, and Zeyzal should combo together well. Bang's really safe and good, and Kumo was the big question mark, and he's still a big question mark because he was losing lane hard to GP.
What do you think of that Jace game? Because
his Jace has a negative CSD average for his career.
But he was, like, 7-0.
He got they all from team fights. He just stole Jizuke's kills over and over. The most obvious one was the last kill near the bot, and he just shock blast after Jizuke does all the work. I don't think Kumo's awful.
Yeah,
but his Jace to me is like it's not a I'm gonna dumpster you. Oh my god, it's the Shy's Jace. It's like a this will help me in lane Jace, which is really messed up. And
it's weird, right? Because he did this when he was on C9 too. When he filled in, he played Jace, and like. Yeah, his laning Jace has never been dominant, but his team fight mid game is very sound.
Yeah,
right.
It's
which is
really
just
weird.
Not how you perceive the theme of the Jace pick. Although we haven't seen the LPL come back yet, that's the region that really plays Jace. I do wonder. There's been a lot of small tweaks to Jace. If he comes back in meta, I'll definitely like read up more directly on the patch notes. I believe. He has been pushed more towards a late-game pick. Like, his power has been shifted. I don't know if that makes him a late-game pick, but it's not as cliffy as it once was.
Right. I was trying to actually watch GP versus Jace VODs on Season 10, which was hard to find.
Jace just, if you're playing it well, GP can never barrel you.
So that's what I was talking with PoE about this, and we were talking about how GP is secretly one of these laners who is a late game pick, but like
as a lane bully.
But as a lane bully, if you can't control his barrels. And I was watching from pro view of Kumo, and he was in range form the whole time. Didn't actually harass, didn't contest barrels, and if the barrel lives, you can't walk forward to auto it if you let it go down to 1, because then
GP will be first, or what?
GP's closer with his Q, and then he drops his second barrel as the chain. And so while you walk up to auto the barrel, you need to contest the barrel right away is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Before it gets to 1, you just have to get it.
Right. You have to time your auto with the 1, and before his barrel comes back off, because it's a longer cooldown early in the game.
So if
it's a barrel
GP ever
system.
gets jungle pressure, it actually allows him to set up barrel pressure.
Right, because he drops his barrel, and if you don't contest it, then when you walk forward to try and hit it later, he just Q and drops a new one, and then that chains to you. So I was watching Kumo. He wasn't contesting barrels. He got hit by a couple.
And once you fall behind it, if the GP's good, he just
grasp
ahead.
procs. And that's what happened. But then it didn't matter. He fell 15 CS behind, because like you're saying. So that's a little bit of... And I'm not a...
That's cool.
Heads up, I'm not a top laner.
Yeah. Really?
So I watch other people better than me play the matchups.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to learn this.
Yeah.
I watched GPs versus Jaces. I watched like 3 games during that game to be like, what are people doing?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, if you get hit by the barrels, you're doomed.
Yeah.
So.
And that, I think, just a more general point of GP as a lane bully in a lot of matchups.
Yeah, it's true. It's true everywhere.
It's true.
Yeah.
He waits in a brush. His passive just out autos you at level 1. He stacks his grasp and he shoots you to death, and he brings potions. It's like, that's how the pick survives. And then there's like this weird mid game dip where he's weak, and then he's super strong late game again.
Yeah.
Like, that's the GP power curve.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm looking at the standings now.
Okay.
And they have been kind of crazy. This is the last time I will say soup on the podcast, just because I want to get a little bit of a rise out of you.
You saw me.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Mark called it the LCS Soup on the dive like 2...
It was on Monday Night League.
2 weeks ago?
It was 3 weeks ago on Monday Night. I think it was 3 weeks. I said the soup once to actually annoy my producer.
Yeah, because like, oh yeah, it's like a soup of teams.
And he was like, don't say that on air.
Yeah.
So I said it on air.
And now you don't want it, and everyone else has been doing it.
Yeah, I regret it. My producer
punishment.
producer was smarter than me.
Yeah, this is like when there's almost an example of this. Like, you tell a child not to eat candy.
I am a child.
You tell them not to eat candy, and then they eat the candy. And you're like, you know what? You're going to have nothing but candy for 3 days. And you just feed them like 6 Snickers bars for dinner.
To be fair, the producer's not the one pushing this.
Like,
it's everyone else.
Yeah. But this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
And we're just getting called the soup. So anyway, the soup of the standings is breaking up a little bit with all of these 2-0s. And weirdly enough, like preseason power rankings, while obviously still having the big outliers like TL being at the bottom of the standings and COG being really bad because people had TL first and COG like 4th, like the middle tier where everyone was like, yeah, you know, between like 100 Thieves, EG, Golden Guardians, Immortals, and Dignitas, most people think 100 Thieves and EG are the best. And like, just magically, it just kind of happened this week where 100 Thieves and EG both 2-0 and it's looking normal again.
Right, and I think that's the important thing to keep in mind with power rankings is usually we're talking end of season.
Yeah.
These are where I think the teams will be. And it's, you know, it's really hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. CLG's not going to recover. TL probably won't recover to first. You know, that's doomed. But overall, these things tend to normalize, and you're always going to get a couple things wrong. But and to be fair, there's still 2 weeks left, so EG could not make playoffs. And then I'm like, oh, I sound like an idiot.
Oh, believe me, that's what I have done with Dignitas, because I had them higher than most. I had them 5th. And
I had them 6th, so I think a lot of people were around 5th, 6th.
Okay, well, I did Wisdom of the Crowd power rankings at the start of the year, where I asked like 20 people, and Dig was 7th. Net.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the Wisdom of the Crowd rankings was actually TL. TL clearly number 1.
Yep.
Then TSM like a smidgen above C9.
Yeah, those are all 3 really, or those 2 close.
Yeah, it was like 2.8 versus 2.9 average. I had C9 second. I think most of the like analysts did. They're very clearly in first. But then it was 4th place CLG, pretty much unanimously. Then EG 100 Thieves had both the highest standard deviation, but fairly clearly in 5th, 6th. Then it went Dig, Fly, Immortals, Golden Guardians.
Right. I mean, so we didn't actually say FlyQuest is one of the big aberrations either. We were talking about the negative aberrations. That's a positive one.
FlyQuest is like the positive one, and Immortals has been, and actually still is in a sense, because they're 6 and 7.
What's their
It's
slide,
trending.
though?
Well, that's the thing.
They're like 1-5 in their last 6.
Immortals and Dig were 2 of the 3 biggest overperformers when we're considering FlyQuest Immortals Dig. But Dig now had the 3-0 start. And I was so like, I was just soaking
called
it in.
it.
I'm like, yes, the Grig works. Like Hoonie and Froggen can work together. Johnson is a prodigy. Aframu's so good.
Do you know how much Kobe talks about this Grig bet that you guys had?
Oh yeah, because I mean, it's probably fine to say this.
It's your call.
Well,
I'm not gonna.
I am a bit of a Grig defender. Kobe's not.
Yeah,
I'll
that's a
just
good way
leave it
to
at
put it.
that. Yeah. And then they sub him out, and they still go 0-2.
That's true.
Acadian looked great in one of his games, not so much in the other. I think there are still junglers that are really close in skill. But anyway,
The point is, Dig's problems run deeper than a jungler.
they were 3-0, and they're 2-9 in their last 11.
Yep.
That is just like a hideous slide. That's basically worse than the league across last 11, like including COG.
Yep.
So that's bad. I think this is the week that booms them for the most part. They've made their substitution. They had a game in the bag against 100 Thieves. They were up like 4K. They threw a Baron. They got it back. Then they lost another team fight from a gold lead. Like, that's boom. And then today, they just sit around for 26 minutes until Golden Glue hits a stun.
And even in that game that you're talking about where they had the gold lead, that was 100% off reacting to 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves went top, counter-ganked. They went top again, counter-ganked again. And then they kept going top, even as Hoonie swaps bot lane. They just keep running at Hoonie, and the team does nothing.
Yeah.
The entire time, they're not getting vision control for Hoonie to know these ganks are coming. They're hovering around Baron. They're not doing anything. And then finally he dies, and the team's like, we have to start doing something. Let's do Baron now. No! So, like, they have no direction. And I think it is – I always try and watch, like, when a team is winning, was it just capitalizing on enemy mistakes? Because that's not repeatable. You can't guarantee –
Well, that's why I got so hyped with Dig.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually why I got so hyped with Dig, is because their early win against TL, which pushed them to 3-0, they were doing Rift Herald swaps. They were breaking top line. They were diving turrets. I'm like, this team can do it.
To be fair, during that time, they did look good.
Yeah. But it just stopped.
It stopped.
Yeah, and it's boom. I can't imagine. I don't think this team turns it around. Like, I feel like they're 5-9 now. They basically have to, like, run the table. I just don't think it's possible. This is my Rip Dig moment where I'm just like acknowledging the sadness because I thought they'd be able to do well. Their final opponents, just before like I gut check myself, is CLG,
they have the
EG, and then they have Immortals, TSM.
It's at least one more loss on there.
Well, okay. Give them another week, Mark. I'm rallying. CLG is inconsistent, and you never know what'll happen with Dig.
So
and G.
if they go 2-0,
they're mostly boom.
They're
Like,
7-9, and then they have to play TSM, assuming they lose that. Like I think you're looking at 8-10, and then you're really hoping that the other teams go on big slides, like Immortals, which could happen.
8-10 usually misses, but hasn't always missed.
Right.
So it's possible. All right, that'll do it for LCS section. I wanted to talk a little bit about LEC. You mentioned that you were keeping yourself in.
I was working on a video this week. Yeah. And it was a long video, and it took a lot of time to make. Yeah. And then I used a lot of ProView in the video, and then I had a bit of a legal, like, ooh, am I allowed to show this much ProView? And
so that took like your Friday, which is normally LEC, and there's also the Saturday morning stuff.
I re-recorded on Friday morning, and then it's a 27-minute video, so to render, upload, and process took my entire morning and afternoon.
Yeah. I'll do a little bit of catch up for you, but then also just like talk briefly about LEC.
You don't need to give me catch up. Just
listening.
give your thoughts. Who cares about that league? You just give your thoughts.
Well, actually, so do you remember me talking about top lane Janna like a month ago?
Oh God, no.
Guess who played it? Do you know this?
Yeah, G2 did play.
Yeah, G2 played and they won.
Yeah, well, so actually, that's the one game I watched. Actually, I did watch this.
Yeah.
There was that monster. He actually played it really well. Unlike, I didn't think Runes was as good.
Ruin was not clean.
There was a fight near the Wraith or the Raptors where the enemy team used their Gragas
the Janna ultimate where he didn't get knocked up and just full healed the whole
team.
And
he was back, and he did a good job. He did it a couple times where he stays the furthest back in his team, and he's like, you come to me if you want the Monsoon. I'm not bringing the Monsoon to you because then I'm in engage range. Yeah. Whereas in Rune's game, even though they won, you can see him step forward a number of times and actually get killed or forced back, and then he can't stand still channeling the whole time.
Or he'd be like in a bullet time and it would kill him through the heal and stuff
right,
like
exactly.
That.
So I would say Wonder's positioning was actually. So I guess I did watch something.
Yeah, you watched like the
what do you know?
match of the week. It was. It
Yeah,
was
you're
G2
right.
versus
Yeah,
Fnatic.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
like that happens
I
twice
totally
a year, and it's
forgot
always
what game it was. I was just I remember the Janna. That's it.
Yeah, either way, big like bullet points is that it was a 2-0 week for G2. They're now solely in first. Not only did they 2-0, they 2-0'd against their biggest competition. They beat Origin and Fnatic. Interestingly, I think both those games were actually pretty close. So the Origin game, they ended up having close gold, but got Cloud Soul really early. And like Perkz played Echo, and like Cloud Soul Echo is just the most absurd thing. His ult's up like every 15 seconds. Like that's obviously not accurate, but that's what it felt like, and that's how Perkz was playing. So like Origin just couldn't keep track of him. And then the top lane Janna game was kind of won by a Baron steal. So you and I talked about this last week, where it's like, how do you even evaluate G2? Because you couldn't take them seriously. In like not a hey they're bad, but it's just like I know that they're not 100% locked in until it really matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were a little bit more locked in this week, but they still end up doing like random 2v2 deaths in the bottom lane, which happened against Origin, needing the Baron steal, even though there was a funny moment where in the post-game interview, Wunder was like, yeah, I think we would have outscaled even without the Baron. And then they cut to post-game lobby, and Perkz and Grabs, I think, were just like, yeah, it's a really good thing we stole that Baron, because we probably would have lost.
we were getting outscaled.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, we were really kind of far behind, and that Baron might have ended it.
Even on the same team, they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, but they're just so good at individually outplaying people, and I do like how they are playing stuff like Janna, Yuumi, Olaf. Here's where I'll do my little top lane Janna sales pitch thing in the patch where it's actually like nerfed out of the game. Because in patch 10.5, the support item can no longer generate in soul lanes without an ally. But I do think that the reason it works, yes, it's partially related to being able to get a little bit of harass gold and kind of deny the other guy. Like, even with support item, you're usually down in gold to the guy you're playing against. I think the bigger thing is the value of a high-level support with an Athenes is really, really, really high. So the fact that Soraka, Sona, and Janna were big picks, Soraka didn't need the support item. I'm thinking that Janna could actually stay in meta. Not like as powerful as it was.
Right.
You put a few more points in queue for better wave clear to take more CS. You build maybe a second Doran's ring for a little bit more AP wave clear, and then you still rush your support items. I think that Karma and Lulu can do this high-level support with Athenes, and I think it's good. Like, I kind of want to call my shot a little bit where, like, I think this is really good.
You did call it a while ago, but you weren't confident enough to say it publicly.
Well, it's because I've done this twice in a row now. I did Farm Share Senna, like, on launch, and was like, just put this with a Nautilus, and you're going to just steamroll people.
And then they did it.
And then, like, 2.5 months later, it happens. And then this Janna thing, as soon as everyone was doing Sona Soraka, I'm like, yeah, Janna works too. And it did. So I think it's actually going to stay good.
So my question is, you're talking about like the putting more points in queue for wave clear.
Yeah, so Ruin did it right. He actually 2-pointed queue. That's what I was doing when I was playing in solo queue as well, because you can clear better with 2 points queue and the mana cost doesn't scale as high.
I was going to ask, you're still doing the support item. How?
Well, so I won't do Spell Thieves.
In the future. That's what I was going to ask, is with the changes, how critical to the having an extra support in air quotes thing is it? Because I don't think enchanter means support inherently to me.
Okay.
Support means like you don't get gold. And if you're getting gold, you're just playing an enchanter. You know, like Soul Lane Lulu, Soul Lane Karma.
Yeah.
It's a different look if you're doing this kind of lower econ style where you're not getting a ton of CS.
Yeah.
And you're getting the wards, but you still have a ton of gold. So is it the benefit of extra warding items that you think makes these things better, or just enchanters are really, really good, Athenes is really, really good, and if I need to just be a farming Janna in top lane, that's better than the extra support ward item?
I think that's more it. The support item is like the cherry on top, but I mean, when you were coaching Curse, like top lane Lulu and mid lane Lulu was the thing.
Quas, I would argue, was maybe the best top lane Lulu.
Yeah, Faker used to play Lulu when it was meta, and I think all the conditions that made Enchantress solo lanes good back then still are actually right in point now. Like, so we have this meta where Stoneplate tank supports are so crucial right? In terms of their vision control, in terms of their lane presence, in terms of the way they need to team fight. So you don't have room for an enchanter, but these 80 carries like Aphelios just pop with an enchanter. But you can't fit it in the team comp unless you put him in the solo lane. So like I think it's actually not super complex, and that's why it works.
And one thing when we were doing this a lot of the time, it wasn't just about the marksman either. Like, yes, you could do a protect the cog, like Juggernaut comp and stuff like that. But it also just works with like scrappy mids and jungles because enchanters are actually really good in skirmishes.
Yeah.
The extra shields that you get more effective HP. And so when people are missing abilities and like this kind of stuff's going on, I can top you off a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's actually really valuable. And so we had some comps that we were running. These were like wild. This one, Pharaoh Flare was strong.
Okay.
So we'd be like, Dom, you're going to power farm on like Xin, and like Aatrox jungle was a thing. And like we'd get these brawly junglers. And it wasn't even about empowering Cop because this is season 4. It was about, we just have like insane shield and healing was busted.
Yeah.
The summoner heal. Remove Grievous wounds.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so we had like Dr. Mundo top, Lulu mid.
You would like heal Ignite Dr. Mundo with the Lulu mid.
And like if you have a high damage jungler, the supports work great with them too. Or if you have a high damage mid laner, a support top helps them too.
So the biggest thing, I like how you bring up skirmishing because there's a few things that make it somewhat difficult to play stuff like top lane Janna. Like you're never going to be able to match a side lane.
You can't 2v2 in a fight either.
Well, I think you actually can 2v2.
You can?
I think the Athene's 2v2 is nutty good.
But you have to get there first.
Yes. Once you get to Athene's, it's like not even close in a 2v2 because on Janna, because you max W, one W auto on the opponent full charges your Athene's. And since your E has the AP ratio on it, it's like not only are you doing like a full spell's worth of damage, which is 300 damage in a trade. Meanwhile, people only have like 1100 health here. Your shield is healing for 200, shielding for 200, and giving the guy 50 more AD. Like it is, in the few games I played of it, like it is so comically unfair when like a Graves hops in and just gets healed full health and gets a bunch of AD.
Do you think it works like the way I watch those Janet games, I'm like, he's not going top. The other team's going to go top and force the Janet back to do all this stuff, and that's what it seemed like teams try to do is attack the Janet.
Yeah.
I assume you don't try and defend the Janet until maybe you're at Athene's, or do you think you could actually take 2v2s with just the Janna on like the support item?
I think you can take 2v2s if the Janna is able to harass. If the Janna is not able to harass, you just leave it.
Okay.
You just let it get pushed in and you go elsewhere.
Okay.
Because you really only need Athenes. That's a long time on top lane Janna, but I feel like we can do that sometimes on this podcast. I wanted to give you a moment to talk about your video a little bit. Just because you talked about a lot of stuff in the video.
Yep.
I don't want to necessarily talk about the drama stuff, but there was a point you wanted to make analytically, and I saw you jumping in some of the comments to try and get back to that point, and I wanted you to be able to restate like the purpose and the conclusion you were trying to make in that video.
Right, and I think I said at the top of the video I'm going to answer or look at 2 questions, and the first one was where are pros building Liandry's too much?
Yeah.
And I don't think I explained that as being the crux of the first 24 minutes of analysis and math.
Because a lot of the responses were about, hey, why isn't he talking about Oblivion Orb not completing to Morello's and then going into other damage items?
Right, and that's a totally separate conversation in my mind. And at the fact that it's 24 minutes already shows how long this video is going to get. But I looked at a Morello's versus Liandry's, and I chose those 2 items because that's what most people compare to. They also have identical build paths, so I don't need to ask the question, how much gold did they have when they back? Because that isn't a problem. Whereas if you go NLR or Blasting Wand when you're on Oblivion Orb, you start asking, how much gold did that guy have when he backed? Which is a really important part of build paths that people don't talk enough about, I think. They kind of just say, oh, this is better, but could you actually have done that when you were forced back at 900 gold? No, you can't go NLR, so you go Blasting Wand, and then are you going voice, whatever. You get in this rabbit hole, and that's why I didn't cover in that. But the crux is, if Liandry's is worse than Morello's, and Morello's isn't even optimal there, then Liandry's is a terrible purchase there. So that's what I was trying to show, was that Liandry's is being bought too often on champions that want to burst targets down. Instead of Morello's, or if Oblivion Orb and NLR or Oblivion Orb Void Staff Rush or whatever you're trying to do, or Oblivion Orb Death Cap is better there, then it just speaks further to the point actually that Liandry's is overvalued.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to show, was that pros have begun. It's gone from overvaluing Morellos, which is the problem before, to now overvaluing Liandry's. And so I wanted to prove that was happening. Liandry's is being overvalued in burst situations. That's what I spent 24 minutes proving.
Yeah.
And I tried to go as in-depth as I could by showing exactly what madness stacks people are at, because I hadn't seen anyone do that before. And I think that's actually really important on an item like that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I actually have just a totally different tangent thought about this video and podcast. So I actually think there's some people listening that actually don't even know what that video is.
Oh, that's true.
Weirdly enough. So you made a video talking about what you just explained, but and this is something that I'm trying to figure out in terms of podcast reach and where viewers and fans are, because you and I are on Twitter all the time.
Twitter, Reddit.
We're on Reddit all the time.
Nonstop.
We chat. We watch every LCS game. We pay attention to other leagues.
I'm watching LCK at night usually.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching LPL when it comes back. Your video was banger top of Reddit for a day. Mm-hmm. It has 84,000 views. That's a lot of views. That's a lot of views for just a video. But in my up next suggested feed, The Dive, Spring Split Matters, 123,000.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That gets a peasant's share on Reddit. Sometimes it doesn't even make front page.
There's different communities.
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of curious of the listeners of this show, did you see the video? Do you even care about this debate?
Right. I don't think people,
because it's really passionate for the people involved in this debate. Believe me. But Morello's versus Liandry's, sure, it's just the smaller community is it's hotly discussed, right? You spent days trying to map this out to make your point about it.
I spent a long time on, because I had to build the calculator with the stats team too, so that I don't even understand the math. If you look at that spreadsheet, holy crap, there's just a massive V lookup table.
League math is really, really hard.
Right, and this is probably as hard as it gets, because it's your damage, their MR, their HP, how fast your combo came out, and were they CC'd during, and for how long were they CC'd?
And what's your spell rotation base damage, and what's the AP ratio of that spell rotation?
Yeah, it's probably as complicated as you could possibly make it.
Yeah.
And because you have to start looking up, are they healing during this too?
Right.
And the amount of things I had to try and take in, and I admit in that video, I probably maybe even missed some stuff, but I thought it was as good as I've seen anyone try to do it before. And I think one of the things people took away from that video as well, and they were found lacking in it, was, well, what is optimal?
Yeah.
Because I'm saying, Liandry's isn't the answer here. And I think a lot of people naturally want to ask, well, then what is the answer? And I didn't give them that answer.
Yeah.
And I think that's where some people found it unsatisfying, or that it was a missed point. But something I also tried to clarify in the Reddit comments is that there is no such thing as 100% optimal. You can find it in that one specific situation. I can test every single item, but in some of those examples, what one item was better there was also worse in that same example. So there's a Kennen dive where he's diving Cody Sun, and then there's a Nautilus right next to him. And Liandry's is better for the Nautilus and worse for Cody Sun.
Right.
And Morello's is better because he gets an Ocean Drake tick. But if he didn't get that, if he didn't get the Ocean Drake tick, it's actually better to have gone more AP.
Yeah.
And he has Summoner Heal, but it's on cooldown. So if his Summoner heals up, well, then Morello's is always better.
Yeah.
And you start seeing that there is no such thing as optimal. What you do is you build what you think covers the most bases as you can cover for what's needed in the game right now, because maybe I built this item because I thought I needed to power spike at 25 minutes because we had a lead and I was trying to close it out, but then the game dragged for 20 more. And it's kind of not about what's 100% optimal. And that doesn't actually exist the way we want it to exist.
Yeah.
Because I can show you in the same game, hey, in this skirmish, Liandry's is actually way better because it was an extended skirmish that was really messy. But is that what you want to build around? Maybe not. You're
it depends on what your goals are going to be.
Right. If you're a front to back team fight mage, a Liandry's is incredible. I see, Oriana's building Liandry's, and I'm like, great.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say Liandry's is bad. I just was trying to show how nuanced this is. And some of the situations, I think it wasn't being built incorrectly.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned that I saw, this wasn't the main point of debate, but it is something that I had thoughts on, was one of your points was, hey, I think that pro players are doing this because they don't want to get flamed. And you'd actually talk to certain pros and analysts, and it's yeah, we have experienced this flame.
Yeah.
And then what I wanted to talk about was that other people then come back and say, hey, pro players shouldn't care about community flame at all. Like that black and white of a stance. And here's like my take on that thing. While I agree, and this is something that we deal with as casters too.
Oh yeah.
And I think anyone in the public sphere actually has to interact with this. And I'm relatively confident about this take. So yes, you don't want to overreact to something that someone says. And even if you ignore something entirely and just push it to the side, that doesn't mean it won't affect you. Because if your peers are watching it or listening to it, and this is a more general point about flame or like criticism, or if your boss watches it, right? Like if a team analyst and then like the president of the team is like, I see a lot of people flaming our item bills. Are you doing the math? Right? And then it's like, well, shit. Like,
yeah.
And then maybe he looks down on you. So like these things they do matter. Like it's good to be able to push it out of your focus and be able to focus on the moment. But whenever you do get like heavily flamed for something, it actually does matter. And you need to be able to kind of respond to it in a way rather than just ignoring it.
Right.
That's my opinion.
I think some people understandably made the assumption that, like, I said, one, it's mentioned in the conversation. It's not like people say, I only built it because I got yelled at. No.
Right.
And it's not like someone has their mouse hovering between the two items and they're like, the community's going to flame me here. And, it's not like a conscious thought, but it is something that is there. And so elements, actually, like old school curse elements
from Curse and COG.
Yeah, he showed up and he was talking about like, well, one way this can influence it, like you're saying, is your peers see the general opinion of the public saying Morello's is bad and Liandry's is good.
Yeah, and even if they don't build it, they'll see you are building the wrong item based on the information they've seen.
Right. And I would just say that, like I said, the math is really, really, really hard. People are like, why don't pros do the math? And this is going to sound like tooting my own horn, but I'm pretty sure that's the most detailed analysis of those items that's ever been done.
It was a lot. You went deep on the very specific thing you were trying to go deep on.
Right. Like, I don't think anyone has done the damage calculator with having each stack of madness taken into account. And it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And pros should not be expected to do that level of math. I had a stats guy build me it. I cheated. I didn't do it. You know, like you can say a team analyst should be doing it.
And I think that's 100% valid feedback, and that should be happening.
Right, it should.
Yeah. And actually, to be completely honest, apologies if this goes too far. Like, I wish the team analysts would have done this.
Well, it's something
been public and defended themselves and defended their players.
It kind of got lost.
Yeah.
But a lot of team analysts didn't know. Like,
okay.
Or at least some of the points I was making, I don't think they knew.
Yeah.
One of the breakpoints I found, which was interesting to me, that I think is just a general breakpoint people should know, is carries do not build enough MR unless they are really itemizing wrong. They can't build enough MR to have Liandry's win in a burst combo.
Even if they're Merc's Hex Drinker?
Merc's Hex Drinker's not even close. Banshee's Veil of Merc's was the closest thing. Okay. And it was a 130 MR LeBlanc. And if your combo comes out fast enough, under 3 stacks of madness, and with CC and stuff, it gets a little murkier. But generally speaking, and it also comes down to AP ratios and yada, yada, yada. It gets really murky. But generally speaking, around 130 MR, they're around 1800 health. They don't get high enough that you would ever want the burn because you just want to burst them in those 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's before even taking into account grievous wounds. And I don't like, that's a really weird breakpoint I found. Like, who knows that? Who, you know, So I think some team analysts were of the opinion that, like, you know, this is just bad. And like, there's a lot of, it's hard math. And so like, I think some people are like, oh, you should be building Liandry's there.
Yeah.
And I've had talks with team analysts who I ultimately disagreed with.
Yeah, and I think one thing you said in the video at the end is like, hey, even though I did like all this math and had the spreadsheet built, like I'm still not 100% sure that I'm completely right.
Right, like if someone did a similar deep dive and found errors, I would be like, maybe.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen anyone do a deep dive yet.
Yeah.
So I guess the takeaway is it's really, really difficult if there's an overwhelming public perception one way and the math is hard and you can't really get a definitive answer. It's really hard to ignore human psychology and put all of that public pressure away. And it's not manifesting as a single in-game situation. It's more about, I started building in my scrims. I started building this because I also just assume it's better. And assumptions build up, and it's because of the pressure that you see externally.
Yeah, I agree with that point. Well, on that note, I think that ends our League of Legends talk.
I guess so.
Last time we talked about sine waves as like a random tangent.
Before
the podcast, you and I were talking about logic courses that we took in college.
Yep.
And if you were out there and you were considering signing up for first-year university courses, I would highly recommend a logic course if you're going to be doing a lot of arguing on internet forums. Super useful.
Jatt had personal experience saying his ability to argue online exponentially improved with rhetoric and logic, or like the more rhetorical logic.
Yeah, not like computational logic, which you explained, but this is more like just a course that lets you really understand like what logical fallacies are, how to identify them, what deductive reasoning is. I ate that course up, and at the time I was like a high-level Guild Wars player, and that community just loved typing on forums because there was like one tournament a month. There was like no viewers, so you really just argued with each other all the time.
Yeah.
I just immediately weaponized this stuff. Like I was calling out all their logical fallacies left and right.
Well, you used your own secretly.
Well, very, very sparingly. But it's this weird thing about just like the way society works. Like I think the biggest example is the like personal attack, the ad hominem. Ad hominem.
Yeah, ad hominem.
I actually still mess up that pronunciation. But it's basically like the crux of this one is you need to attack the point, not the person, right? That just doesn't work in the real world. Logically, it makes sense. Like, logically, you shouldn't just be able to say, this happened to me all the time in Guild Wars because we were like our guild was like a defensive spike guild, and that's the stuff we played. So anytime we'd argue that like, no, actually, our stuff isn't OP for these reasons. We're the only people that do it. No one else does it. Like, you're playing these other things. If you think it's good, why aren't you playing it? All the time, the only counter was like, you're only defending defensive spike builds because you're a defensive spike team. And like, while that may be true, you need to be able to attack my arguments.
Right.
And that's what I would always be able to come back with. Like, actually, no, prove it, because I've done all this proof to show why it's not OP. Please prove to me why it is.
Yeah. I mean, there's a million of these things. Like, appeal to authority is one that you hear constantly. Like, well, he's Jatt.
Right.
He can't be
Of course he knows what he's talking about. Well, no, not really.
He's a professional analyst.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you listen to him?
Yeah, like maybe there's a higher chance that I'm right, but really, unless I'm saying the correct argument.
Yeah, you need to actually look at the words coming out of his mouth.
Exactly.
There's a ton of these, and they're really fun to start picking people apart with. Red herring, straw man, slippery slope. Slippery slope is a weird one to me.
Yeah, if this is true, this is also true, but like
you
to
play
an
it
extreme.
Yeah.
So you're like proving one small thing. Maybe it was. Take the course. Like I'm not going to give you the course in this 10 minutes of podcast.
Yeah,
but it was fun. I think slippery slope is like. I used to always hear it when they were talking about like the legalization of marijuana or something.
Yeah, they're like, if you legalize this, then you're going to legalize coke.
Then, like cocaine obviously is next.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, like marijuana. We're only talking about one thing right now. Why are you trying to talk about this other more extreme thing?
That's the general idea of slippery slope. But sometimes I do like taking things to the logical extreme and then walking backwards, which I think is a fair form. But I'm always like, where's the gray area between like, the other logic course that we were talking about was formal logic, I think is what it's called. And it's more about statements that you can then manipulate to find new truths from a bank of information. And the really simple version that you hear is like, all dogs have spots.
Yes.
Carl has spots.
Right. So what can you say?
What can you say? Can you say he's a dog?
No.
Well, not necessarily.
You just know that Carl has spots.
Carl has spots. And then you say, Carl is a dog. Well, then he has spots because all dogs have spots. And so, really simple example, but then when you take formal logic, you build like 10, and you build, these are like axioms basically.
Yeah.
And then you try and infer different things and learn, and you can like solve puzzles. It's basically like puzzle solving using formal logic, and there's specific operators you apply. And
how much programming did you take in school?
I went to school for games design. I made a game.
So did you,
It's greenlit on Steam.
Is it still on Steam?
Yeah, you can Google it. I just lost
your game.
I lost the source code, so I made it.
What's the name of your game?
Gravity Bomb.
Is it on Steam right now?
You can't buy it. So listen, this is the annoying part that I'm actually really mad about. I made the game. I put it on Steam.
Okay.
I effed off to
Steam Greenlight.
I effed off to esports for 3 years, and then I looked back and I was like, "Oh crap! It got greenlit," and then I lost all my source code, so I couldn't give it to them to publish.
I'm watching your trailer right now.
It's a gravity puzzle platform shooter.
Oh, and okay, this is like fascinating.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. It looks cool. I feel like I'd try this.
I would give it, if I was going to rate that game, I'd give it a 7.5.
Greenlit is being retired. For more information on how to submit games, so like no one can get it.
Well, so I could still, if I found the source code, I could still submit it.
Okay.
Because it's been greenlit, but you can no longer like put up new submissions for greenlight.
Was this just you, or was this you and multiple people?
All programming was me. I had a guy help on art because I'm just not an artist.
Yeah. The art looks it's clean.
Yeah. We went for like a minimalist.
Oh, there's a picture of you in the YouTube video.
Probably.
6 subscribers, Mark Zimmerman.
Was good.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. That's the highlight.
So yes,
of this
I know a
podcast.
lot of programming.
Yeah. So then the actual question was, is there a way to explain this like I don't know what I'm talking about, which is true with programming. Like machine learning, is that all based off of these logical things, or is that something
different
totally
types of machine learning can work this way?
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. I was bad at it. So
I didn't expect you to be able to do it. This is just like a moonshot.
There's a couple layers to it. So like you start with formal logic, and then once you are able to formalize statements as true or false, you can turn that into computer code. And then you can start building bases of knowledge that then the computer can learn, and you can insert new axioms, you can test things, and it'll test them again. And that's really where like some of machine learning comes from. There's obviously like the data set type ones, which are a little different, and it's a really wide study.
Yeah.
And I was never good at it, and I was like, I don't need to be good at this. I will not be the AI programmer for if I ever end up working in games. I'll be something else.
Right.
I want to be a designer anyways. I didn't want to be a programmer.
Yeah. Well, we have plenty of things to talk about in the future. Thanks again for coming on the podcast. Mark Zimmerman from Hotline League, the Analyst Desk,
The Dive,
the YouTube video that he posted his first video of, the MarkZ YouTube channel.
In a year and a half or something.
Mark Zimmerman on Twitter. Hey, I'm Jatt. This was JLXP, and we'll see you next time.